U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday said he would speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday about stopping the war in Ukraine, and that he would talk afterward with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The conversations would come just days after a Friday meeting in Turkey between officials from both countries. A senior Ukrainian official familiar with Friday's talks said Russian negotiators demanded Ukraine pull its troops out of all Ukrainian regions claimed by Moscow before they would agree to a ceasefire. It was the first time the two sides had held face-to-face discussions since March of 2022, weeks after Russia's full-scale invasion of its smaller neighbor. Trump, in a social media post, said he would speak to Putin at 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday, writing, quote, "The subjects of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing, on average, more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade." He added that he would speak afterward with Zelensky and various members of NATO. Trump had offered to travel to Turkey for Friday's talks while in the Gulf last week if Putin would also attend, but Putin sent a team of negotiators instead. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke by telephone with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Saturday and said he welcomed the, quote, positive role of the U.S. in helping to secure a resumption of talks between Russia and Ukraine. Rubio was quoted as telling the CBS News program Face the Nation that Lavrov said the Russians were, quote, working on a series of ideas and requirements that they would have in order to move forward with a ceasefire and further negotiations. In the interview, to be broadcast Sunday, Rubio said of the Russians, quote, "I think your question is, are they tapping us along? Well, that's what we're trying to find out."
Скажи, хай відкриває крана, я йому даю воду.
In the very beginning, during the first explosion, I was at home with my little son. We went to the cellar all together. I always take cover in the cellar and drag my children with me. Then my younger son said, "Mummy, let's go to the kindergarten." I didn't want to go and thought we would survive if there were just 10 drones. It wasn't the first time in our life. But he insisted and we went to the kindergarten. Thank God, we are alive. But I feel very sorry for the neighbors. A young woman died. I can't get over it. I simply can't. I could clearly hear the drone flying right towards my house. Pope Leo XIV formally began his reign on Sunday by reaching out to conservatives in a call for unity, while vowing to continue the late Pope Francis's legacy on social and environmental issues. A packed-out St. Peter's Square cheered for Leo as he took his first ride in the Popemobile to greet the Catholic faithful who had come from all over the world. Afterwards, Leo was officially installed as the 267th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church and sovereign monarch of Vatican City at an outdoor mass. He succeeded Francis, who died on April 21st after 12 often turbulent years as Pope that saw him championing the poor and marginalized, but also battling with traditionalists. In a sermon read in fluent Italian, Leo said he would face up to the questions, concerns and challenges of today's world. And in a nod to conservatives, he promised to preserve the rich heritage of the Christian faith, repeatedly calling for unity. Leo also vowed not to be an autocrat after some of them had accused Francis of being heavy-handed. Briefly addressing global conflicts, the Pope also called for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine and mentioned the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. It came as the wars in both places appeared to intensify over the weekend, with Gaza's medics reporting more than 100 people killed in overnight Israeli airstrikes, and Ukraine saying Russia had launched its largest drone attack following Friday's peace talks in Turkey. Among the many world leaders attending the Mass was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He had a private meeting with the Pope afterwards and later said he was grateful to the Vatican for its readiness to host direct talks between Ukraine and Russia. A Ukrainian source told Reuters Zelensky also met with US Vice President J.D. Vance and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines of the inauguration. Zelensky was seen shaking hands with Vance at the start of the ceremony. The two men last met in February in the White House when they clashed fiercely in front of the world's media.
In recent weeks, it's become clear.
Former U.S. President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with what his office called aggressive prostate cancer. In a Sunday statement, the office also said the 82-year-old and his family are reviewing treatment options. Most prostate cancers are diagnosed at an earlier stage. That's according to Dr. Chris George, director of Northwestern Health Network's cancer program, who says the news that Biden's cancer has spread to his bones points to a later stage of the disease, but that it could still be controlled.
When the cancer has spread to the bones, that makes it stage 4. That means that the cancer is not curable. There's no treatment available that can cure the cancer. You could control it for years. 2 or 3 years is very realistic, and some lucky patients get control for 4, 5, 6, and even longer. Usually prostate cancer doesn't, go full throttle like this too often. When it does, that's usually a bad sign. That's an aggressive cancer for sure, but it does seem odd.
Biden's office says he was diagnosed on Friday after experiencing urinary symptoms. Dr. James Brombot is a urologist with the Orlando Medical Group. He says that now Biden is likely to undergo hormone therapy.
In a lot of patients that get diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer, the treatment usually starts the day of the diagnosis. So we're trying to slow down the cancer, which can be fed by hormones or testosterone.
Biden's mental and physical health were subjects of scrutiny during his presidency. He ended his run for a second term in office after a halting TV debate performance. Dr. George says the cancer diagnosis is unlikely to be linked to those issues during his campaign.
And my belief is probably not. I don't think he had cancer the last 2 years, and that's why we saw physical decline on television. I think probably that happened from something else, and this cancer just happened to be diagnosed.
Ryanair projected that airfares would rebound this summer after last year's 7% fall. The airline reported strong demand compared with last year, when consumers struggled with high interest rates. The Irish low-cost carrier reported a 16% fall in annual profits for the 12-month period ended March the 31st. But it said that fares for the 3 months ending in June are expected to rise by a, quote, mid to high teen percentage year on year. That's largely driven by the timing of Easter. And the airline said robust demand across all its 37 markets has beaten CEO Michael O'Leary's price recovery estimates. He added that summer bookings are running around 1% ahead of the same period last year. Ryanair shares were up 3.4% in early trading.
Farms in Brazil are reeling from an outbreak of bird flu and waiting to hear just how bad it will be for business. But if the world's largest poultry producer can contain the outbreak in its southernmost state, then officials say any nationwide bans on exports could be quickly lifted. Authorities have declared an animal health emergency and are racing to stop contagion from this farm in Rio Grande do Sul state. This official from the state's Agriculture Secretariat says all chickens have been eliminated from the farm and disinfection is underway. Major buyers like China have triggered 60-day pauses on shipments, but Brazil hopes they can be persuaded to limit restrictions to affected states. The outcome is crucial for the global market, with the country accounting for more than a third of the chicken trade. That means a prolonged ban would be bad news for consumers around the world, not just Brazilian farmers. The US already faces its own devastating outbreak of bird flu, which has limited demand for its exports. China now blocks poultry from more than 40 US states. But if the Brazilian outbreak worsens, American producers may hope that Beijing will be pushed to relax some restrictions. Under an agreement brokered during Donald Trump's first term as president, China is supposed to lift bans on individual states 90 days after they eliminate bird flu. However, US industry bodies say Beijing has been keeping bans in place for longer than that. Brazilian farmers hope that the warm relations between country President Lula da Silva and Chinese leader Xi Jinping will help avert the worst outcome. An agriculture ministry official said strong global demand for chicken meant other countries would have to show flexibility.